Right, the Democrats' election takeover bill, what they call For the People bill, well, it doesn't seem the people are too interested in it. A letter signed by 20 state attorneys general was sent to House and Senate leaders denouncing H.R. 1 as a usurpation of the historical constitutional authority of state legislatures in setting the rules for elections. But the left, listen, the left is clearly energized over this bill. For them, this is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
And we cannot allow ourselves to be seduced by the big lie, or worse, seduced by this notion that because this insurrection in January didn't work, that we're out of the woods. We're not out of the woods until we create a foundation for democracy, and that is H.R. 1.
That was Stacey Abrams talking about setting a foundation for democracy. She was on MSNBC's Joy Reid making those comments. Well, joining me now to talk about all of this is the Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, who spearheaded this letter of the country's almost half of the country's attorneys general. General, welcome to the program.
Hey, Tony. Good to be with you. For democracy, hardly.
Well,
for socialism, probably.
Exactly. And I've never seen them so enthused and energized, which tells me there's a lot at stake here.
Yeah, right. This is foundational in the sense that once they get a hold of the election process, you know, the power of the people under our Constitution goes right out the window, and that's what they want. You know, when you talk about big lies, I mean, when you look at people and you tell them, hey, this is for democracy, this is for you, when it's coming out of a politician's mouth, right, you can pretty much gauge that it's the opposite of what they're saying, especially when it's a far left politician. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing.
Especially in Washington. I mean, like the name of this bill, For the People bill. I mean, look, this is not for the people. This is for the politicians. It's stick it to the people bill is what this does. This will disenfranchise so many people. And you know, I know as the Attorney General, one of the things that you do along with your elections officers, you want to make sure that things are done according to the rules, that people do not violate the law. This, as I'm sure you have raised this issue, this opens the door for voter fraud and for other means of depriving people of their vote.
Yeah, and so let's get into the specifics if we could, because, you know, first of all, I'm thankful for the other attorneys general who joined in this effort. We're all leading, frankly, on this because we all see what it's really doing. The Constitution is very clear, and it was the basis for our lawsuit last fall when Indiana joined Texas and several other states in suing Stacey Abrams, Georgia, and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. It was because they were using the Wuhan virus excuse to change election laws, and particularly the legislatures weren't. Unelected liberal judges were. Unelected election officials were. And they were changing the laws in those states to where they were allowing felonious conduct, right? Things that would have been felonies 2 months earlier, not felonies in Indiana, although they would have been, but felonies in their own states 2 months before practices were now being allowed. So what H.R. 1 does is codify all those terrible ideas, all those bad practices, all those things that caused millions of Americans to question the validity of the election results, somewhere we never want to be again. They want to make that the law of the land. So it starts with making illegal photo ID at polling places. So when I was Indiana Secretary of State, we implemented the nation's first photo ID law, and I got sued 4 times for it. But luckily, we stuck to our guns. We were called every name in the book, and it was probably the beginning of the cancel culture, as I would see it now. But we stuck with it, went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and with even a more liberal court than we have today, Tony. We won, and not even 5-4. It was a 6-3 decision because we did it right. We narrowly tailored it, and now 32 states enjoy a photo ID protection because we kind of paved the way. So H.R. 1 in one fell swoop would make all that illegal, right? As a state, you couldn't ask a voter for photo ID. Now compare that to like the country of Mexico, where I just saw a dual national in Indiana showed me her voter card for Mexico, Okay, not her driver's license or anything else, but they issue a specific voter card. It has her picture, of course. You flip it over. It has her fingerprints that are then compared to her fingerprints that she would put on the poll book when she would vote in a Mexican election, right? So this is a borderline third world country that is doing 100% more than we are currently in America, and would be completely outlawed in America under H.R. 1.
So,
you
General,
get rid of the accountability.
let me ask you, because, I mean, the basis of this, as you mentioned, is the Constitution. That's why you and the other attorneys generals have taken this action. Why did the founders want the states to be the entity that set the guidelines for elections?
Great question. It's so we wouldn't end up in an autocratic situation like they had seen other countries do at the time, and that we have seen since. You want to, in order to preserve the most individual liberty and the most control over government by the people, you have to, in all things, decentralize as much power as possible. And so this is a great example of that. In the Constitution, specifically written that only states, and particularly only state legislatures, can set election laws and procedures. And the reason it's state legislators is because that's the entity that's closest to the people, right? The people have the most accountability over what, when you change how representatives out every 2 years, that's an accountability measure. So it's not left to unelected people, and it's not left to unelected judges. It's not left to even election officials. Even when I was Secretary of State of Indiana, and that's a statewide elected position, I was never allowed, if I wanted to change the length of the chute to a polling place, I had to go get a state law passed. And it was frustrating at the time because, when you're trying to do the right thing, trying to do good things, trying to make things fair and accountable, you prefer just to be able to do it. But there was a reason that I was not able to do it, and only the legislature was, and we respected that, of course. But that's the reason.
This turns that on its head, H.R. 1.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. So it takes the decentralization aspect that the founders intended and centralizes it. It goes the opposite way. And so that's why it's so important to stop. And that's why I'm very interested that you're having Mitch McConnell on later, because, to hear what he's going to say, because usually H.R. 1 already passed the House. And so now it would need 60 votes in the Senate to become law. And we have to hold these 10 Republicans, which sometimes is hard enough. It should not be that hard a lift to stop H.R. 1, but could, and this is an open question to Mitch, could the Democrats use a reconciliation measure to do it? And they have, in my count. I was vice chairman of the House Budget Committee at one point, so probably one of the few folks around that really understand, and wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I happen to understand the reconciliation process a little bit, and would say, hey, they have 2 more reconciliation bullets between now and the 2022 election. Would they use it? Could they use it on H.R. 1? And it's not really a fiscal measure, but could they really turn things on its head and try to use it?
They are talking about doing portions of this, possibly using the interstate commerce clause as a basis for making it a fiscal issue.
Yeah, right. See, I'm not tuned into all the Washington stuff. So you are much more than me, but yeah, that's a real worry. And then so you'd have one part of the Constitution combating another, and the Supreme Court would be asked to decide if this ever became law. And by the way, look, this becomes law, and I promise you and your listeners, the sun won't set in Indiana before I sue on behalf of the people of Indiana.
Well, and that was in your letter warning the lawmakers that the state attorney generals are not going to sit to the side and watch this happen.
Right. So, but then we're relying on 5 of 9 people.
But it's better than it was.
Here.
The court is better than it was, yeah. And we have the Trump administration to thank for that. General Rokita, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to thank you for leading the charge on that, because I think there's a lot of big issues, but this is one of the biggest, because this will fundamentally change the political landscape of America if it goes through.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us.